Shalom. All praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS who were well. Peace and salutations to the elect. My name is Aina. The title of the video is Putin's Big Interview, right? And basically, I found this video. I'll take the description. I'll put the link in the description box. Found this video of Putin just talking, and pretty much the scriptures came to mind, these few scriptures, and I got them here. And it's pretty much just goes into the fact how the Most High Yahweh Bashim Yahweh is, controlling things, right? And he put everything in a set measure. And basically Putin tried, as he said in his video, with all his might to try to be joined with America, right? Be joined with the beast, right? That's why Putin is not a part of the beast. That's why he's not a part of NATO, because the Most High Yahweh didn't make it so. But Putin wanted that. He tried to do those things, And so yeah, this is second Ezra chapter 15, verse 1. It says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy." See, so the words of prophecy, they're set in their perfect place. It says, "Which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Awashah, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true." See, so these words, these prophecies are faithful and they're true, right? And they're speaking here. And I'll grab this one right here. This is second Ezra chapter 4 and 37. It says, "By measure hath he measured the times, and by number hath he numbered the times. And he doth not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled." Right? So we can see basically these things are leading up to Ezekiel chapter 38, pretty much on how Russia mindset is going. Right, with eventually them saying we have to destroy America, because as he goes to in this video or this interview, he says, he tried to be friends, but then it came to a point where he had to basically increase himself and just become a superpower. That's what he goes into, and that's pursuant to Ezekiel 38 also, where the Most High Yahweh said, he's gonna, and I'll grab it. So it's a good video. You can check it out. Like I said, I'll put the link in the description. So anyway, Ezekiel 38, this goes into Russia, right? It says in verse 38, Ezekiel 38 and 4 or 3. It says, "And say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Awashah, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal." Right? So this speaking towards Russia. It says, "I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine armor. Horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shield, all of them handling swords." Right. So basically, he's going to turn back Russia to that old Soviet, strength. And he even mentions that part in here about the fact that the Soviet Union had died, and he was still wondering, what's up? Why America is treating me this way? This is Revelations 20 and 7. It says, "And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison." That's Esau eating the so-called white man, right? Basically, that of America, because the Roman Empire came back as America, pursuant to the scriptures, okay? Even though Russian are Edomites, right? We got some Jake over there too, but they're Edomites, right? But the Most High Yahweh is using the Edomites here in America, to go against Russia. Those Edomites in Russia, right? It says that's why you have the Egyptian against the Egyptian, American against American, the same race of people, against the same race of people. Revelations 20 and 8, it says, "And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea." Right, so this was always going to happen. But Russia didn't know why. Putin didn't know why. And that's because here, Proverbs 21 and 1, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Awashah. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will." All right, so these scriptures came to mind. I'm gonna grab this interview. I won't. Now that I thought about that, that's the part that he said. Let me see if I can find it. If not, it don't matter. Let me see. Okay, no, they translated it. I'll just play it from the beginning a little bit then.
И партнеры. It was clear from the early 2000s. Yet we had illusions, I did too, which were about the following. Me and many others at that time believed that the problems in relations between the Soviet Union and the so-called West were primarily ideological differences. On one side, a communist regime, which was considered by many as tyranny, and on the other, the democratic world led by the United States. Strangely enough, I worked for almost 20 years in the Soviet Union's intelligence. I also thought that the main contradictions were of ideological nature. But the Soviet Union collapsed, there was no communist regime, yet the dismissive attitude toward the strategic interests of the Russian Federation remained not just dismissive, but it was all tied to the clear desire to achieve geopolitical advantages. Moreover, even when I became president, I didn't understand everything right away. I began to convey to my Western colleagues, look, you say one thing, but do another. Here is the proof. Then I presented this proof. They nodded and said, yes, yes, we will sort it out now. And nothing happened, it was quite the opposite. It became obvious to me that ideology might have had some significance, but essentially, all these contradictions are based on geopolitical interests. That was the main thing. I mean, the Soviet Union performed an auto da fe, it liquidated itself. Hardly, I never discussed this with my predecessors. They believed that Russia would become part of the so-called civilized world. In the West, they decided the following, there is no Soviet Union, so why should we follow the rules concerning Russia, which does not possess the potential might that the Soviet Union had?
You see, that's the point I was talking about. So the Soviet Union fell, but and you know the most, and Esau even pointed out to Russia, like, yeah, well, the Soviet Union is done, right? So why should we listen to you? The Most High Yahweh said, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws and bring thee forth. So this is what's happening here in these last days, and you can clearly see in this interview that Russia's being dragged to this point here. You know, it's not of himself. How Esau Edom is full steam ahead doing what is Revelation 28 says.
Now we will carve out something for ourselves as we like and live by rules we invented for ourselves, ignoring our interests. I will not go into details now because we proposed a lot in the field of strategic offensive arms and in the field of missile defense. Everything was constantly rejected. Well, it became clear that until we assert ourselves as an independent sovereign power capable of defending our future, we will not be respected.
All right, he says it became clear that he had to do something. So what comes next? Because here we are. This interview is July 13, 2025. We're July 7, 2023. I'm sorry, 2025, July 23, right? So what comes next is Ezekiel 38 and 10. It says, also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind. Obviously, this is not in Russia's mind right now. You know, they're still trying to see what's up. You know, it says, and thou shalt think an evil thought, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them, dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. And this is ultimately talking about the land of Israel and the land of America, right? And Putin right now doesn't have this thought, you know.
Способные отстаивать свое будущее, с нами считаться не будут.
In those relatively recent times when we tried to copy everything from the West, many worshipped the USA in 1990s, when you worked in the St. Petersburg City Hall, was it really the case that a senior American delegation flew to St. Petersburg? And one of the Americans pushed or rudely handled a Russian on the runway, and upon learning about this, you refused to receive this delegation at St. Petersburg City Hall? Did that happen? I don't quite remember that. Honestly speaking, you know, maybe it was... Yes, I probably understand what you're talking about now. There was an episode. Honestly, it was insignificant. This American delegation did come to St. Petersburg, and someone from this delegation was very rude to a border guard. Yes, that's what happened. I was recalling whether it was a customs officer or a border guard. It was a border guard. I considered that absolutely unacceptable because a person in uniform, while performing his duties, represents the state, and treating him with disdain means treating our state with disdain. Of course, we didn't refuse to receive this delegation. We worked with them as planned according to protocol, but I simply didn't interact with them. Is it risky to let them understand, you, friends, are behaving very hypocritically? Well, yes, in some sense it is risky because Russia opposed those trends that were gaining momentum in the world at that time. By the way, I drafted my Munich speech while flying on the plane.
All right, so you can check the video out. I pretty much found this and I want to share it. Like I said, I'll put it in the description box. Lord willing, edified, and comforted by the scriptures, knowing that they are faithful and true. Shalom to the elect, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom.